But I will start to talk a little bit here, kind of about what our aim is and what our intent was with Defender Friday. So, the idea here was to create kind of a collaborative space for defensive-minded folks to come together, share ideas, share knowledge, all that kind of good stuff. Anyone here that's participated in Thursday Defensive, it's going to feel similar in some ways, but very unique in others. And that was kind of our intention. Was as I was kind of joking about with a few of the early joiners. I don't think there's any such thing as too much defensive related content, right? In my opinion, I don't think there's enough of it. And so that's what kind of inspired us to launch this new webinar series, and just add more defender focused topics. And this one's going to specifically focus around things like security engineering, detection engineering, automation and orchestration around SOC related type work, and really just bringing together everyone from security analysts to detection engineers, and kind of pairing up our minds and raising the collective sort of bar, if you will. But okay, hey folks, so we're kicking this thing off. Let's get this thing started. So let's talk about Defender Fridays and kind of the aim here. I'll give you kind of a more formal sort of description of what we're trying to do here. And so essentially what Defender Fridays is our weekly rendezvous with the forefront of information security, right? So I'm Eric Capuano. I'm part of the dedicated Lima Charlie team, and it's my pleasure to guide you through this unique series of insightful fireside chats. So at Defender Fridays, we delve into the dynamic world of information security, exploring its defensive side with seasoned professionals from across the industry. Our aim is simple yet ambitious, to foster a collaborative space where ideas flow freely, experiences are shared, and knowledge expands. So each week, what we're going to do is we're going to bring a different guest who will share their invaluable insights on topics ranging from threat hunting to incident response, security operations, detection engineering, and everything in between. Now, what makes these sessions special is their informal and interactive nature, allowing for an engaging dialogue between our guests, our hosts, and you, of course, our audience. So whether you're a seasoned professional or you're just curious about the field, we still invite you to join us in these conversations. So let's learn, discuss, and grow together in this ever-evolving realm of information security. Welcome to Defender Fridays. Now, a couple other little housekeeping things I'll just let you all know, and forgive me, a couple of you have heard this already, but for the folks that are just joining. So as you first join Defender Fridays, you'll notice you're in here as an attendee, which does not let you unmute or come on cam. However, we are wide open to inviting any and all of you that would like to participate more face-to-face with us to just simply either let us know in the chat, and then one of my colleagues is going to drop a form in the chat here shortly that would allow you to just put in your email address, and then we will send you a panelist invite. That means from this day forward, you will join automatically as a panelist and be able to come on cam and come off mute, right? And again, that doesn't put any expectation on you personally. It just gives you the option to kind of make this more of a collaborative thing with us. Now, as I mentioned to you, I'm Eric Capuano. I'm one of your hosts, okay? But the other two that will be hosting this series with me are also here on the call. We've got Matt Bromley. We've also got Whitney Champion. So we'll kind of be your three predictable hosts that will be here. But as I mentioned, the idea of the show is not just to hear from the three of us, but also we're going to be bringing on rock stars and just all around awesome contributors to the defensive side of information security. So there's never a dull moment. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, for this first show, since it is our first show, I am actually going to be the guest speaker, if you will. And so what I've queued up is a topic around kind of detection engineering that I think is crucial to anybody in the blue team side of this business, right? So if your job centers around finding bad guys inside of enterprise networks, then what I'm going to show you today is going to be a crucial foundational skill that you kind of have to have. Now, I'm also going to preface with this. What I'm going to talk about might be years behind your experience. It could be a couple of years ahead of your experience. And that's okay, right? Because we're going to range in topics on this series from, beginner level stuff, intermediate and advanced, and sometimes, spread in between of those, right? Even in the same show. I would say this topic is probably more of a beginner to intermediate topic. but still a crucial and foundational thing and a good reminder for folks that are in this business doing this kind of work all the time. So give me a moment here and I'm going to bring up a screen share and I'm going to use that to kind of talk through this topic and actually demonstrate some of these concepts. So bear with me real quick while I remember how to share my screen in Zoom. Here we go, share screen, and let's get it going. All right, so hopefully my screen's coming through. Anybody give me a thumbs up real quick? Awesome. Okay, so detection engineering, what is it? Well, it can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. To me, what it means is it's the art of crafting, detection signatures to look for adversaries inside our networks, right? And there's so many ways to do that, right? There's basic things like just look for interesting keywords. Like I should never see a process on one of my systems called mimikatz.exe. That's probably not good, right? But there's definitely more mature and evolved ways of thinking about detection engineering where we start to think about behavioral patterns, right? Or just different types of activities that may not be outright malicious by themselves, but in combination with other things, they suddenly become more suspicious, right? And so, we in the time that we have here, I'm just planning to show you a handful of concepts around detection engineering. But the most important thing I think I can share with you today is the method of which I'm doing this, right? So most of you are probably familiar with the idea of virtual machines, right? Well, virtual machines are still a critical role or a critical tool to have in your toolbox for doing things like this. Because in what other environment can I blow some stuff up, run some adversarial, tactics and techniques, and not upset, the production SOC or what have you? And so I have here a little virtual machine that I've pre-staged some tools on, right? I've got a little attack tool that's called Sliver. And real quick, I want to share that because it's a really awesome tool just to be familiar with. Open source, you can find it on GitHub. It's made by the folks over at Bishop Box. So what Sliver is a little command and control framework that attackers could use, red teams could use, very much like, your Metasploit, Meterpreter, or your Cobalt Strike with its beacon, right? What I love about Sliver is it's open source and just crazy easy to use. At the end of the day, I'm not a red teamer. I'm not looking for the powerhouse of attack tools. I'm looking for the easy, reliable, just let me do some things so I can hone my detection skills, right? So Sliver is kind of my tool of choice for this. So what I've done in this VM is I've installed the Windows subsystem for Linux, which is one of my favorite features that we've had since Windows 10, right? The ability to run Linux inside of Windows. And that's what you see over here on the right-hand side is I'm in an Ubuntu shell, basically, on my Windows box, which allowed me to download and install Sliver and then set up a little service on there. So it's got a listener running all the time that I can then connect a piece of malware back to, right? And what you'll see is if you kind of step back through some of the commands I've run here, I can even generate my C2 payload. So this is like my malware, right, that I plan to run on this box. I can generate it here in this console and literally just drop it right on the Windows host because this Linux system here is running inside the Windows host. So it's super convenient to do it this way, right? So once I generated that payload, what I did was over here on the left-hand side, I went over here and executed it on this Windows system. And then shortly after, we got a little C2 session right here. So it's saying right here, there's your C2 session. That means the malware has run. It has established a connection back to Sliver. And now the system is mine, right? To go and run whatever kind of evil things I have planned, right? Now, the only thing that I've done so far was I ran a command. This is a Sliver command that allows me to kind of privilege escalate on the box. So I was running as an admin, but I really want to get the highest level privileges possible, which would be system on this box. Well, it's as simple as this: get system, and then another session opened very shortly after that with system level privileges. And I of course verify that maybe with a who am I command here. And of course, it is confirming that I am now running in that C2 session as system on this box. Now, I love that because that means I can get away with anything now, right? And that's exactly what we're going to do. So let's kick off some attacks. Right now, again, folks, this is not an adversarial training session here. The only reason I'm running attacks is because I plan to write some detections for these attacks, right? So the attack I want to run is actually a LOL bin attack. meaning a living on the land binary. So a built-in binary on the system that will allow me to dump credentials from memory, right? Now, there's a bunch of ways I could do that. I could just use Mimikatz or a whole number of different tools, but those are malware. If I drop more malware in this environment, I might get caught. So let's do it a way that keeps me kind of under the radar, because this is exactly how our attackers think. Now, the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to search the running processes on this system, which real quick, I'll show you what that looks like. If I run a ps-t, notice I get a listing of all the processes running on this box. And this is cut off because I'm zooming in here. But I got a bunch of different processes running on this host, to include my malicious process right here, fierce imprisonment.exe. But I'll tell you, the process I'm after right now, if I want credentials, is this lsas.exe. Because as many of you probably know, LSAS is a very sensitive process. It's connected to the local security authority sort of service on the machine. And it's where a lot of sensitive things are kept, like credentials of the logon session and various other things. Well, attackers know this. And so they know if they want to get their hands on credentials, one of the easiest ways to do that would just be to simply dump out lsas.exe from memory, and then they can take that offline and they can scrape credentials out of it with a number of different tools. So we're going to use an LOL bin to do exactly that. I'm going to dump out LSAS from memory using the comservices.dll. This is a built-in DLL. It's a normal benign DLL on the system. I'm going to execute it with run DLL32, but that's the DLL we're going to run because it has this mini dump function that will literally dump a process from memory. All I need to specify is the process ID that I want, which in this case, as you saw up here, is 788 for lsas.exe. The only next thing I'm going to give it is where I want to dump it to. And, that could be anywhere. We'll put that in C Windows temp, and we're going to call it lsas.dmp. And let's execute it, see what happens. Okay, so it kicked off the command, right? And there's probably a really good chance if I popped into that location, hopefully, if that command worked, we might see a little dump file in there with our LSAS in it. And there it is, 48 megs, lsas.dmp. Now, if I was truly an adversary, the next thing I'd probably do is I would upload that file up to my attack server somewhere so I could extract the juicy credentials from it. But I don't care about all that. That's not what I'm here to do. What I'm here to do is craft a detection for this. Now, folks, I'm going to show you here a tool, a platform that is going to seem conveniently placed because, as you all know, I'm a member of the Lima Charlie team. Several of my colleagues here are the member of the Lima Charlie team. But know that this is nothing close to a pitch of our product or platform. It just so happens to be the easiest way in the world for me to get my hands dirty with a little bit of detection engineering. So what I've got here is a Lima Charlie instance that this system, this VM, has an EDR sensor on, right? So that means I have telemetry from this system streaming into Lima Charlie, which, by the way, let me just preface with, this is not a product pitch. This is a 100% free tier platform. So you can sign up and do the same thing I'm doing right now without spending $1. So I can come in here and I can kind of take a look at all the telemetry that's coming in from this system right now. Now, I have the benefit.
Hey, Eric, it's Matt. Do me a favor really quick. Could you zoom in on that font just a smidge for some folks?
Yeah, how about let me just use the browser zoom. Is that any better?
That works too. Yep, good to go. Thank you.
All right, cool beans. So I have the benefit of knowing, because right now I'm both the adversary and the blue team, right? I have the benefit of knowing what exact thing I'm looking for right now, right? I'm looking for that suspicious run DLL32 execution. And there's a really good chance it's probably this one right here. And what do we see? We see our run DLL32 execute, but really this is the giveaway. Look at the command line arguments, right? We've got that com svcs.dll with the mini dump function being called, and then a PID for 788, which may be the LSAS process, right? We'd have to double check and confirm that. And then a real obvious giveaway is when attackers do really predictable things like this, using literally the name LSAS in a dump file, right? So like there's so many detectable things in this, it's not even funny. But this is exactly why I ran that command. I wanted to see, what does this look like in my telemetry coming from this system, right? Now it gets even better, because now that I know what it looks like, obviously the next step would be, well, let's craft a detection rule for this type of activity, right? Now, folks, let me just reiterate, because I'm very much the anti-pitch person. Like I don't care for it. I don't care for people who do it. So let me just clarify that everything you see me doing in here right now can be done in any platform that you have that has similar capability, right? So again, this is just me showing the easiest way for me to demo this. Now, what I love about this though is that in Lima Charlie, I can literally just take this one event and say, I want to build a detection rule for this activity. And what it's done is it's brought me into the dialog that allows me to craft a detection rule, and it brought forward some of those fields that I probably care about. And so the only one I'm going to get rid of is this one right here, because this one just kind of says that we're only detecting it on this host name. Okay, I'm not worried about that, but I am absolutely interested in these two. So this first condition is file path is run DLL32, basically, right? Sitting in system 32. Now, folks, let's talk about this real quick. And this is another one of those detection engineering things that you'll start to want to learn as you get better and better and better at this. Now, while this condition right here is fine as is, well, let me tell you what's wrong with it. This is saying the path will be exactly C Windows System32 run DLL32.exe. Now that's great and all, but does anybody know? And I want to bring up the chat because I do want to get some interaction, some dialogue. Does anyone want to know how that one condition could be so easily bypassed with the same utility? Run DLL32 still, but not in System32. Is there another copy of run DLL32 on the system? Let me ask it a different way. All right, Lee just got it. Yeah, yep. But I'm going to finish my comment here. There's another copy, folks, of every major system binary on your Windows box. The 64-bit version of these sit here in System 32. However, there's a 32-bit version that sits in a folder called syswile64, as Lee pointed out there in chat. Now, I know that sounds super confusing, right? I just said to you that 64-bit processes live in System 32. Their 32-bit equivalents live in syswile64. Like, what gives, right? Well, that's a story for another day. But I bring this up for a reason, because if I wanted to write a really robust, resilient rule that's going to catch lots of different variations of this attack, I probably want to omit this part right here, because it could be running in System 32, but it could also be running in syswile64, or an attacker may have copied it to a completely different location, right? So these are the things that detection engineers have to think about. If your signature is too specific, you might miss other variations of this attack. So I'm going to change my logic here and say, look, I don't care where it is. If run DLL30, if the path ends with run DLL32, let's look at it, right? Now, the next thing that we're looking for here in our logic is the command line arguments that were passed to this process when it ran, this run DLL32 process. Now, folks, run DLL is one of my favorite things to pick on, because it's used for a lot of other things as well. I mean, plenty of good things, but also a fair amount of bad things are able to be done with run DLL32. So there's a lot of different anomalies we can look for here in a run DLL32 execution. Now, in this particular example, really the only ones I probably care about is, for instance, reference to this DLL right here, because this DLL is what has the mini dump function that allows me to dump a process from memory and write it out to the disk. So if I'm looking for this particular activity, I can probably narrow this down and just say contains, we can make this really simple. What's the least common denominator in this command line, right? Com services is interesting, but really it's the function name that's probably most interesting to me at all. So I could probably get away with this rule right here, right? Because this is going to find any run DLL32 running from anywhere where the term mini dump shows up in the command line arguments. That's probably enough, right? So, depending on whatever platform you're using, right? You could be writing a Splunk query, you could write a carbon black detection, whatever it is you're using. Obviously, there's going to be some sort of output that's going to happen. In my case, I'm just going to generate a little alert that says, run DLL32 used to dump process, right? I think that's descriptive enough, kind of says what this rule is looking for, and that alert will be named accordingly. So we'll save off that rule. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our Windows system, and I'm going to run that again, right? Because, hey, creating a rule is only half the battle. We got to make sure the rule works, right? And that's why we like to have our little test lab here, where we can fire off these attacks and make sure that our detections are doing what we think that they're doing, right? So let's run that again. We've got that now. And what we can do is pop in. First of all, let's go look at our timeline. Let's see if that event has streamed in here yet. And I already know what I'm looking for. So we'll just go run DLL32, narrow that down to the good stuff. Just taking a minute here, looking through lots of telemetry. Well, here, let's go about it a different way. Let's go take a look at detections. Nothing yet. Okay. Give it a second here.
Eric, hang on. I gotta spin the hamsters up. Give me just 1 second.
Yep. Just go get back on the wheel there for me, bud. Yeah, let's just give it a second. The system I'm on is cloud hosted, and so its connectivity is not always perfect, and sometimes that causes a little delay in my events getting where I need them to go. But we'll give that a moment here. Matt, you got any other thoughts to add on kind of this process, this methodology I'm going through here? I know you've got a ton of experience with this kind of stuff. So
yeah, no, let me go ahead and speak to some of the stuff that's happening in the chat as Eric's going through this as well. So there's been, I know at least one folk, but I'm sure a lot of you have this on your mind too, where you're like, wait a second, do I have to observe this data and look at this way? Absolutely not. I'll echo Eric's point from the very beginning. Lima Charlie is the tool that he's using right now, but the real goal is to observe process execution and this is an important part here, and the command line arguments that go with that. Because if I go to you and say, go find run DLL32, folks, every Windows system in the world is going to have thousands of them per day, if not more, right? So it's the command line arguments that are the important part. But just to lend to some of the other evidence sources that are out there, if you've got process auditing enabled, 4688, Sysmon Event 1, things like that are other ways to get there. Now, I don't want to repeat word for word, but one comment I just dropped in, when you're going through and looking for these types of events and whatnot, again, I would argue and say the keywords of what you're looking for are going to be the important part here. And I know, Eric, when your detection comes up, you're going to pivot on this as well. But folks, run DLL32, calling a DLL, that's also not malicious in itself. Eric, I'll let you get back to the detection here because this is going to pick apart the actual maliciousness you're looking for.
Awesome sauce. Yeah. So, okay. So now we've got our detection, right? And this is kind of validation that my signature fired, but let's make sure it fired on the thing that I was expecting it to fire on. So you're seeing right here in this detection, first of all, there's the name, right? Run DLL32 used to dump process. And remember, what was the logic it was looking for? Well, it was looking for that file path ending in run DLL32, but it was also saying anywhere in this command line, if you see the mini dump function being called, that's probably our guy, right? That's probably the thing we want to look at here. Now, of course, folks, let me give you the other side of this, though. It would not be wise to tell you, oh, it's just that easy, right? Because the other thing that I'd have to consider is, well, wait a minute. What if there's a lot of legitimate stuff in my environment that also does this? Which is possible, right? This mini dump function is obviously there for a reason, right? Or it wouldn't be part of a legitimate DLL. So one of the things that a well-to-do detection engineer is going to think about is, what would be the prevalence of false positives of this signature before I just yeet it into prod, right? I should probably just take a look at historical events. And folks, there's a number of ways you would do this, right? If you've got a big seam that you can run queries against, you could say, show me all those run DLL32 executions where mini dump is contained in the command line, right? Another thing I love about our platform is we literally let you do it right here in this dialogue of writing the rule. I can basically scan historical events. I can go back a year and just say, show me how many hits I would have gotten for this detection rule, right? And it's going to come back and say, oh, you would have only got 3 hits in the last year. And I'd say, okay, well, either this thing is extremely low false positive, or we've got 3 other breaches we need to go look into, or 3 other incidents we need to go look into, right? And so it's showing me right here kind of a preview. Here are the historical events that this would have triggered on. Well, this is definitely one that I care about, so that's good, right? If I keep going, there's another one in here. This is the other one that I care about. So in my experience, or I guess in the context of what I'm doing here now, this would be a fantastic rule because it only brought back 2 events in historical, whatever historical time frame I'm looking at, and both of those events are bad. So this is a fantastic rule. However, if I had gotten back a bunch of false positives in this list, right, what I'd have to do then is analyze them and say, okay, well, what is it about this one? Let's pretend this one here was legit. I'd say, okay, well, what is it about this one that makes it legit? What can I use to exclude in my DNR rule? Like maybe I don't care about it if it's got the word fool in it, or maybe I don't care about it if it's got, this particular DLL in it, right? Again, we do care about this instance because it's a bad one, but like I'm just kind of walking you through the thought process, right? The mindset that you kind of want to get into. A solid detection rule has little, if any, false positives, but is written well enough that it is very unlikely to miss a true positive. You see, that's the delicate balance in this whole game, right? Because I also would have to keep in mind that, well, hang on a minute, is mini dump case sensitive, right? What if an attacker wrote the command like this? Mini dump, right? Just kind of weird case sensitivity, right? Like if the attacker ran it like this, would my detection still work? I know that probably sounds very trivial to you, folks. It is not trivial. Have you ever raised the question, is your seam, the way it works today, is it case sensitive or not? Or the detections that you've written case sensitive or not? Because you'll see attackers do weird stuff like this right here because they know that there's an okay chance that might bypass some detection rule that you've written that is not sensitive. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And folks, for anyone that doesn't think that that's like realistic, folks, Matt and I actually both worked a pretty serious threat hunt once where we uncovered a nation state adversary, and that's exactly how we found them. It was a Iranian threat actor called Muddy Waters. And we found them basically because of this kind of weird calling of PowerShell with strange case sensitivity. And it was not getting picked up by the built-in detection rules that customer was using. And so we're like, yep, well, here's your breach, right? So we laugh, but like these things are real things, right? This is real tactics. So wow, time flew by. I had like 3 or 4 more things I wanted to show you guys, but I think I'm gonna have to kind of bring it to a close here. So man, I feel like I lost like 10 minutes there. I was just running and I'm like, man, it can't be done already. All right, folks. All right. Yes, Javier, thank you for the question. I can add a case sensitivity flag here that says not case sensitive, and then it would immediately no longer regard case in that example. So yes, and that's a good question to be asking your own tooling, right? How does your tool work? And how are your signatures written, right? Because you don't want to miss a detection because of a simple case sensitivity issue. But keep in mind some of the other things I shared with you, right? You want to be able to maybe chain a few conditions together. What if I wanted to look for the combination of the word mini dump and the word full, because that shows up here too, right? But being sensitive to the fact that one or the other may not be present, so it really takes a little bit of time and a little bit of finesse to kind of, get good at this. Now, folks, I will share one final resource with you. If anyone here was kind of digging this a little bit and actually wants to try it out on your own, I'm basically pulling these TTPs right from a blog series that I maintained. It's a handheld sort of guide. It's a guided lab that you can go and do. It doesn't cost you anything because our platform's free. It's got a free tier. So you can get in there and you can actually do these things hands-on on your own. But anyway, enough plugging my blog there. So folks, as we bring this thing to a close, which feels unfortunately sooner than expected, I do want to remind you. So this is a new weekly series. We're going to be here every Friday, same time, same place, unless there's a holiday, which we've got a couple coming up. So just be mindful of that. But if you haven't already joined the Lima Charlie Slack, this is where we can keep the conversation going between series. We're going to have new guests on every week. You're going to get to hear from a bunch of other folks, not just folks on our team. And one last thing that I'll throw out there. If you saw the link dropped in chat to join as a panelist, I highly encourage and hope that you will, because as you can kind of see right now, it's just my colleagues on cam. That's not the way we want it to be. We'd love to bring any and all of you on cam, be able to unmute, have a conversation with us. It's a ton of fun, right? So if you see the panelist request form there in the chat, just fill that out real quick. Just give us your email, then we send you a panelist invite. And for every episode moving on, you'll join as a panelist and be able to come on and chat with us. Well, folks, I'm not going to keep you any longer. We're going to go ahead and wrap this thing up. Thank you so much for joining us. One last thing I'll let you know. All of these episodes are recorded, so they will show up on the Lima Charlie website. I believe we have a resource called Webinars, where you'll be able to go and see this and all future episodes not long after they air. All right, have a fantastic rest of your Friday and a great weekend, and we'll see you all next week. Take care, everybody.